The Intersystem Survey Corps prided itself on precision. Every mission was calculated down to the last decimal point. Every contingency planned for with the kind of obsessive detail that would make a paranoid accountant weep with joy. Their vessels were marvels of engineering, their crews trained to handle everything from diplomatic incidents to solar flares. They could navigate asteroid fields, decode alien languages, and catalogue 17 different types of atmospheric phenomena before lunch. What they apparently couldn't do was keep a ship in the air. The ISV Methodical Approach, because nothing said we're fun at parties, quite like naming your spacecraft after a procedural manual, had been cruising through the outer reaches for 6 standard months. Their mission was simple, in the way that simply cataloguing uninhabited worlds across 3 sectors was simple. Point scanners at planet, record data, move on, repeat until someone back at headquarters decided they'd earned their vacation time. The crew of 47 represented the best the Alliance had to offer. Well, mostly. There was Quellen, the Zephyrite navigator, whose species had been crossing space for 3 millennia, and who treated every deviation from the flight plan like a personal insult from the universe. His crystalline form refracted light in ways that made him look perpetually judgmental, which matched his personality perfectly. Then came Vex, the Vraxian engineer, all chitinous plating and procedural devotion, who could recite safety protocols in 7 languages, and did so at every opportunity. The science team was led by Moros, a Terranoid whose philosophy degree somehow made him qualified to study stellar phenomena, and who never met a simple observation he couldn't turn into an existential crisis. And then there was Marcus Chen, the human. Marcus was an intern. More specifically, he was the intern no one remembered requesting. He'd shown up at the start of the mission with proper credentials and an unsettling amount of enthusiasm, so they'd stuck him in the botany lab cataloguing space moss samples. He was 24 standard years old, had a degree in something called environmental science, and possessed the kind of optimism that suggested he either didn't understand how boring survey work was, or had transcended caring entirely. The rest of the crew treated him the way you might treat a houseplant, nice to have around, probably doing something useful with carbon dioxide, but not someone you'd trust with actual responsibilities. This was about to change in the most dramatic way possible. The problem started, as these things often do, with something small. A micrometeor strike that their shields should have deflected, except the shields were running a software update, because apparently even in space, someone thought it was smart to schedule system updates during active operations, and the meteor punched through the hull plating like a cosmic bullet. The Methodical Approach lurched sideways, alarms screaming in 3 different tonal ranges to accommodate various species' hearing capabilities. Quellen's crystalline body flashed panic red as he fought the controls. Vex was already cycling through emergency protocols, his mandibles clicking in agitation. Stabilizers offline. Gravitational compensator failing. We're losing altitude. Quellen's voice crackled through the comm system. They'd been passing by an uncharted ocean world at the time. One of thousands in their survey queue, barely worth a second scan. Class M atmosphere, abundant water, probably some interesting algae if anyone cared to look. The kind of planet you marked on a chart and moved on from. Instead, they were about to get intimately acquainted with its surface. The crash landing was controlled in the way that controlled means everyone survived but nobody enjoyed it. The Methodical Approach carved a spectacular trench across a pristine beach before coming to rest half buried in silver sand, listing at a 30-degree angle that made walking the corridors an adventure in physics. Damage assessment took 3 hours. The conclusion was professionally devastating and personally inconvenient. They were stuck. The communication array was slag. The main engines needed parts they didn't have. The automated distress beacon was functional, but their last known position put them at least 3 rotation cycles from the nearest patrol route. Maybe 4, possibly 7 if the bureaucracy was feeling particularly bureaucratic. "We're stranded," Vex announced because someone had to say it out loud. Minimum 72 hours before potential rescue. The crew took this with the calm professionalism of trained survey personnel, which meant a lot of quiet swearing in various languages, and one Quellan having what could only be described as an existential shimmer. They spent the remaining daylight hours securing the ship, running diagnostics, and establishing a perimeter that was completely unnecessary given they were literally the only complex life on the planet. But protocols were protocols, and following them made everyone feel like they had control over something. As the local star began setting, a gorgeous display of violet and amber that would have been better appreciated if everyone wasn't stranded, someone's stomach made a noise. Then several more in a cascade of biological reminders that even highly advanced species needed to eat. "Food synthesizers?" Moros asked hopefully. Vex checked his datapad, mandibles drooping. "Offline. The power surge fried the biorecombinators. We have emergency rations only." A collective groan rippled through the assembled crew. Emergency rations were technically nutritious. They were also, by universal consensus, an affront to the concept of flavor. Each one was a compressed block of proteins, carbohydrates, and minerals that tasted like someone had distilled the essence of disappointment and formed it into a convenient bar. "How many?" Quellan asked, already dreading the answer. "Enough for 72 hours, assuming standard consumption rates. So we're going to be hungry and miserable." "Correct." The crew dispersed to their temporary quarters, discussing rationing schedules and nutrient distribution with the enthusiasm of people planning their own bland demise. Several crew members made half-hearted jokes about the irony of starving on a planet literally covered in water. A few tried the emergency rations immediately and confirmed they were exactly as terrible as remembered. Nobody noticed Marcus slip away toward the beach. When evening fully descended, the beach was transformed into something almost magical. 2 of the planet's 3 moons had risen, casting everything in silver-blue light. The ocean bioluminesced gently with each wave, creating a natural light show. The crashed ship looked almost artistic at this angle, if you ignored the smoke damage. Quellan was the first to notice the human was missing. "Has anyone seen the intern?" Shrugs all around. Someone thought they saw him wander off. Nobody was particularly concerned. What trouble could he get into on an uninhabited planet? Then someone spotted movement down by the waterline. A figure wading into the surf, illuminated by moon and bioluminescence. Several crew members wandered over to investigate, more out of boredom than actual concern. Marcus was knee-deep in the alien ocean, holding what appeared to be a sharpened stick and something woven from beach grass. He was staring intently at the water, completely still. "What is he doing?" Vex whispered, as if speaking too loud might spook whatever was happening. "I believe the human is hunting," Moros observed, sounding fascinated. "Hunting? With a stick? Humans are persistent predators. It's quite remarkable, really. Their species evolved. He's going to get poisoned or eaten," Quellan interrupted. "The xenobiology on this planet is completely uncatalogued. Those could be toxic. Those could be predators. Those could be—" Marcus struck. Fast. His improvised spear plunged into the water and emerged with something large, many-legged, and very angry impaled on the end. It looked like someone had crossed a crab with a lobster and then made both of them much angrier about the arrangement. Its shell was deep blue, and it had entirely too many claws. Marcus whooped in triumph, holding his catch high. "Oh no," Vex said. "Oh no, no, no." Protocol 719 clearly states that unanalyzed organic material should never. Marcus was already wading back to shore, where he dumped the furious crustacean into his woven basket. Then he turned and headed right back into the water. "Is he getting more?" Quellen's form flashed alarm orange. He was indeed getting more. Over the next 20 minutes, Marcus caught 6 more of the alien crab things, dodging claws, and apparently unconcerned about the 17 different ways this could go catastrophically wrong. By the time he emerged fully from the water, he had a basket full of agitated seafood, and the look of someone who'd just solved a problem everyone else was still complaining about. "Excellent," Marcus called out, apparently just noticing his audience. "These look perfect." "Perfect for what?" Vex clicked. "They could be lethally toxic. They could be sentient. They could be protected by some local deity we haven't discovered yet." "They look like crabs," Marcus said reasonably. "If it looks like a crab, acts like a crab, and lives in an ocean like a crab, it's probably delicious like a crab. That is not even remotely scientific." Marcus shrugged and started gathering driftwood. Large pieces, small pieces, everything burnable. The crew watched in mounting confusion as he began arranging them in a specific pattern on the beach, creating a small pyramid of wood with what looked like dried seaweed as tinder. "Now what's he doing?" someone whispered. Marcus knelt beside his wood pile. He had 2 rocks, both some kind of flint-like mineral he must have found on the beach. He struck them together. Sparks flew. "By the void," Moros breathed. "He's creating combustion, uncontrolled combustion," Vex added, his voice rising 3 octaves. "On an alien planet, with unanalyzed atmospheric conditions. Strike, 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 strike." The sparks caught in the dry seaweed. A wisp of smoke curled upward, then a small flame. Marcus carefully fed it with smaller sticks, building it up with the patience of someone who'd done this before. Within minutes, he had an actual fire going. The crew stood transfixed. Fire was something that happened in engine cores and industrial forges, carefully controlled and monitored. This was fire just happening, right there on the beach, with nothing but rocks and organic matter. It was primal and terrifying, and somehow absolutely fascinating. The smell of wood smoke drifted across the beach. Several crew members found themselves drawn closer, despite their better judgment. Marcus, apparently satisfied with his flame situation, turned to his basket of increasingly less angry crustaceans. He pulled out a multi-tool standard issue, nothing fancy, and began working on one of them with the efficiency of someone who'd cleaned shellfish before. "He's not going to," Quellen started. Marcus placed the cleaned crustacean directly onto a flat rock he'd positioned at the fire's edge. The sizzle was immediate and aromatic. "He is," Vex finished, sounding somewhere between horrified and hungry. The smell that began wafting from Marcus's impromptu cooking operation was obscene. It was savory and rich with hints of sweetness that the ocean brine had infused into the meat. It smelled like food, actual food, not compressed nutrition blocks that tasted like institutional despair. More crew members gathered. They formed a loose semicircle around Marcus's fire, watching with the intensity of scientists observing an unprecedented phenomenon, which technically they were. "This is incredibly dangerous," Vex announced, but he said it while moving closer. "Absolutely reckless," Quellen agreed, his crystalline form now shifting to curious yellow. "Fascinating from an anthropological perspective," Moros added. "The human is reverting to ancestral survival behaviors. Quite elegant, really." Marcus flipped the crustacean. The cooked side was a gorgeous reddish-orange, the meat inside white and steaming. He poked it with his knife, checking for doneness with the confidence of someone who knew what he was doing. "All right," Marcus announced. "First one's ready. Who wants to risk horrific alien food poisoning with me?" Silence. 46 pairs of eyes or eye equivalents, depending on species, watched him. Nobody moved. Marcus shrugged, pulled the crustacean apart and took a bite. The crew held its collective breath. This was either going to be the stupidest thing they'd ever witnessed, or the most brilliant, possibly both simultaneously. Marcus chewed, swallowed, smiled. "Oh wow," he said. "That's actually incredible. Tastes like a mix between crab and lobster with a hint of something buttery." "Anyone?" Vex cracked first. His chitinous plating had been clicking with increasing agitation, but now he stepped forward. "For scientific purposes," he announced, "someone should verify whether the human is experiencing toxic hallucinations or if the food is genuinely safe." Marcus handed him a chunk. Vex's mandibles made short work of it. The engineer went very still. "Then this is extraordinary. The protein structure is remarkably similar to verified class A nutritional sources. The flavor profile is complex and delicious," Marcus offered. "I was going to say non-regulation, but yes, also delicious." That broke the dam. Quellen approached next, then Moros, then a dozen others. Marcus cooked crustacean after crustacean, distributing them to a crew that had gone from resigned misery to cautious optimism to outright enthusiasm in the space of 20 minutes. Someone brought storage containers. Someone else grabbed tools from the ship. Marcus found himself with assistants, then with a makeshift cooking station, then with what could only be described as a primitive but functional beach kitchen. "We could improve heat distribution with thermal plates from the engine room," Vex suggested, his earlier protocol concerns apparently forgotten. "The medical scanner could verify which local plants are safe for seasoning," Morris added. Marcus grinned. "Now you're thinking like survivors." Over the next hour, the operation expanded. Marcus tested local vegetation using the medical scanner's chemistry analyzer, completely against protocol, but no one was citing protocols anymore. He found several plants with flavor compounds that wouldn't kill anyone. One tasted like pepper, another like citrus. A third was eerily similar to garlic. The crew watched in amazement as he created actual seasoning from alien plant life through nothing more than trial, error, and a complete disregard for proper xenobotany procedures. "How do you know this?" Quellen asked, watching Marcus sprinkle powdered leaves over another batch of crustaceans. "Camping," Marcus said simply. "Also my grandmother. She always said if you can make fire and find protein, you'll never starve. Your grandmother taught you to survive on alien planets. She taught me to survive, period. The alien planet part is just applied learning." The cooking setup evolved. Flat rocks became griddles. A salvaged metal panel became a proper grill. Someone rigged up a spit. Marcus showed anyone interested how to catch more crustaceans, and soon there was a steady supply of fresh seafood. By the time night fully settled, something remarkable had happened. The beach had transformed into a restaurant. Marcus had arranged seating using debris from the crash, storage crates as tables, salvaged cushions as chairs, emergency lighting providing ambiance that was way better than it had any right to be. The fire blazed cheerfully in the center, cooking surface radiating heat. And there was a line. 46 crew members, representing a dozen different species, were queuing up for food prepared by a human intern using Stone Age technology. "I'll take the special," one officer said, approaching Marcus's station. The special is whatever I just pulled out of the ocean, Marcus replied. But I can do it spicy or mild. Spicy, please. You got it. That'll be 1 emergency ration bar. The officer blinked. What? Look, I'm doing all this cooking right. Only fair you guys contribute. I'll trade meals for those nutrition blocks. I can use them for fishing bait. The crustaceans seem to like them. The crustaceans have terrible taste, someone called out, and everyone laughed. But the trading started. Crew members happily forked over their emergency rations in exchange for actual food. Marcus accumulated a pile of compressed disappointment while distributing pleasure. An economy emerged, primitive and organic, and completely outside any regulation. Vex, who had sworn up and down he'd never violate another protocol, became Marcus's best customer. He returned 4 times, trading extra rations he'd apparently hoarded. This is absurd, he said while accepting his 4th plate. Completely outside proper nutritional guidelines. But delicious, Marcus reminded him. Well, yes, obviously. That goes without saying. Morrow settled onto a crate with his meal, watching the fire with philosophical appreciation. You know what's remarkable? We spend centuries developing technology to prepare food efficiently, sterilely, consistently. And yet this, he gestured at the chaos of smoke and sizzle, this tastes better. Why is that? Because technology optimizes for nutrition, Marcus said, flipping more crustaceans. Humanity optimizes for delicious. There's a difference. Profound, Morrow said. Also, may I have seconds? The night stretched on. The crew ate, talked, laughed. Someone started telling stories. Someone else attempted alien sea shanties. The fire crackled merrily, smoke rising into a sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. For a group of people who'd crashed on an uncharted planet, they were having the time of their lives. Just after local midnight, sensors picked up an approaching vessel. The rescue ship, arriving nearly a full rotation cycle early. Why are they here so soon? Quellen wondered, checking the readings. Says they detected unusual energy signatures from our location, Vex reported. Wanted to investigate potential hostile activity. They detected the fire. Marcus's beach grill was so anomalous to normal survey operations that it had registered as a potential threat. The rescue ship landed on the beach, sending up clouds of sand. The hatch opened and Captain Thane emerged, a battle-scarred Krovian who looked like he'd personally fought in every conflict since the Great Expansion. He surveyed the scene before him. The crashed ship, listing and damaged, the crew assembled on the beach. And between them, a roaring fire with cooking surfaces covered in food, surrounded by makeshift seating and the unmistakable ambience of a thriving restaurant operation. What? Thane said slowly. Am I looking at dinner service? Marcus called out cheerfully. You guys hungry? We've got plenty. Thane approached the fire like it might explode. He stared at the cooking crustaceans, then at Marcus, then back at the crustaceans. His translator struggled to keep up with the confused noises he was making. You crashed, he said finally. Your food synthesizers failed. You've been stranded for nearly 18 hours. And you opened a restaurant. Well, when you say it like that, it sounds weird, Marcus said. But yeah, basically. Vex stepped forward, looking slightly guilty. In the humans' defense, the emergency rations were insufficient from a morale perspective. We formed a committee, Quellen added. Very official. The committee concluded that anything was better than compressed nutrition blocks. Morrow's finished. Thane looked at his officers, then at the crew, then at the human casually grilling alien seafood over an open flame. This will be the strangest rescue report I've ever filed. Try the food first, someone called out. Then decide how strange it is. Thane did. His expression went through several distinct phases: suspicion, surprise, confusion, and finally resigned pleasure. "This is incredible," he admitted. "What's in it? Alien crab, alien herb blend, and the tears of every safety protocol I violated tonight," Marcus said. "Outstanding." Thane turned to his crew. "Break out the emergency supplies. We're trading for dinner." The rescue ship's crew joined the party. More cooking, more eating, more trading of ration bars for actual meals. The beach grill operated for another 3 hours before Marcus finally ran out of ingredients and energy. By the time they loaded the Methodical Approach's crew onto the rescue ship for transport, dawn was breaking over the ocean. The fire had burned down to embers. The makeshift restaurant stood empty, a monument to improvisation and human stubbornness. "You know," Quellen said, watching the planet recede through the viewport, "I'm not sure I want to go back to synthesized food. The human has ruined us." Vex agreed. "We've been corrupted by primitive cooking methods." "Expanded horizons," Moros corrected. "We've been given perspective on the difference between surviving and living." Marcus, exhausted and covered in smoke smell, grinned. "You guys should try camping sometime. Really experience the universe." "Absolutely not," 3 voices said simultaneously. "But maybe," Vex added quietly, "you could show me those seasoning techniques, for research purposes." "And the fire starting method," Quellen said. "Backup skills, just in case." "Pure academic interest in ancestral human survival practices," Moros concluded. Marcus's grin widened. "Sure, academic. I can work with that." Back at Survey Command, the incident report caused considerable confusion. The captain of the Methodical Approach tried to explain what happened. The review board tried to understand. Eventually they filed it under Human Improvisation Case Study #847 and moved on, because apparently humans doing impossible things with inadequate resources was common enough to have a filing system. There was, however, a formal inquiry into the emergency ration situation. Several crew members submitted complaints, noting that if compressed nutrition blocks were less appealing than untested alien wildlife cooked over open flame, perhaps the emergency rations needed improvement. The manufacturer's response was not recorded, but the next generation of emergency supplies reportedly included natural flavor compounds and improved palatability metrics. Marcus received a commendation for innovative resource utilization under survival conditions. He also received 17 job offers from various galactic restaurants, 3 proposals to start a survival training program, and 1 very strange marriage proposal from a Quellen who'd apparently become emotionally attached to his cooking. He declined them all and requested assignment to another survey mission. When asked why, he said exploration seemed more interesting than fame. Also, he'd heard Sector 9 had excellent fishing. The crew of the Methodical Approach went their separate ways after debriefing, assigned to different vessels and missions as was standard practice. But something had changed. Vex started carrying primitive fire-starting materials in his emergency kit. Quellen took a course in wilderness survival. Moros wrote a paper on the intersection of technology and tradition that became required reading at the academy. And on quiet nights, when they were alone in their quarters eating synthesized meals that tasted like efficiency rather than joy, they remembered a beach on an uncharted world. They remembered fire and smoke, and the smell of something cooking that wasn't made in a lab. They remembered laughter and trading, and the way food could turn strangers into community. They remembered the night a human intern with a sharpened stick and absolutely no regard for proper procedure had shown them that sometimes the most advanced solution was knowing when to do things the simple way. The universe, vast and complex and filled with wonders beyond counting, had been briefly improved by fire, food, and the realization that maybe humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization wasn't their technology or their diplomacy. It was their absolute refusal to accept being miserable when being comfortable was possible, even if it meant catching their dinner with a pointy stick and violating every safety guideline ever written. Somewhere in Survey Command's archives, buried among thousands of mission reports and incident files, there's a notation that reads, "Emergency Protocol Revision Recommended." Human solutions, while unorthodox, demonstrate effectiveness. Consider integration of primitive survival techniques into standard training. Also improve emergency rations. Current options inferior to literal alien seafood cooked by untrained personnel using combustion-based heating methods. Below that, in smaller text, someone had added, "The human was right. The crabs were delicious." And in the end, that was probably the most important discovery of the entire mission.